Let's use F9 snare to do this. We're going to do this inside of Ableton, but because of the multi-format patches that we've created for F9 snare, you can do what I'm about to show you in any DAW. What I've done to start this process is taken one of the snare hits and then repeated it on every beat of a bar. That then doubles up to 8th notes a little bit later on, and then 16th notes and 30 seconds. Now, this is really easy to do now inside of most DAWs. You can just basically grab the snare and then copy and paste things across like that. It's very easy in Ableton. Every single other DAW will have its own method, but that allows you to get a kind of really simple basis for these kind of snare rises. And that last bar is really important, where we've just filled it up with 30 seconds. Okay, that's level 1. Now let's have a look at level 2. So I started off with a simple pattern of 16th note snares, and I chose the sample that was on G1 in this MIDI patch, and this is the 909 style snares. Now if I just go a bit further on and solo, you'll hear what this is doing. Now, why did I choose just that one sound? Well, it's actually a 909 snare recorded in stereo. So in other words, we took 2 separate 909 recordings, 8 times round robin, and then actually built a patch with them. 1 pan hard left, 1 pan hard right. Why that's important? Well, because the noise content of the snare really makes it quite wide, and that's brilliant for these kind of drum fills. Now, then I've gone down to the macros and I've started with the high cut. So in other words, all of the high frequencies removed. So right down to 136 hertz. So as it's starting, it feels really bassy. And you'll hear it starting to open up there. So let me just show you the automation that I've got in place. Now you'll see there's 2 stages to this filter up automation. It's quite slow at the beginning, and then it opens up quite quickly towards the top. And also I've repeated this part up at the top. So the very last bar is on 30 seconds, same as our chopped audio part. So therefore you're going to get a consistent sound with these 2. But having it start right at the beginning of the breakdown really kind of leans in, gets the user listening to the fact that this is a breakdown and it's all just about to kick off again. Now, I also automated 2 other parameters, and that's the hold and the release of this drum. And if you have a look at what I've done here, it's only slight. Oh, in fact, there's a little mistake there. That probably should be like that. And if we go to release, similar kind of thing. In fact, I can drop that down there. So basically, the snare is not just opening up in terms of frequency, it's opening up in terms of length as it's going through. And anything that you can do to build something like this up can be astonishingly good, trust me. Okay, the next one is I added another snare drum that's just really hitting down on those 8ths, similar to the chopped snares that we've got up at the top here, but with a different sound. So you can hear when that joins in, it's reinforcing those 8ths. So you're kind of building up on this rhythm. You've got this fast 16th note rumbling along underneath. And then we're saying, no, here's the second section, and we're on the 1, 2, 3, 4. You get the picture. And again, we got the same thing going on here with the 16ths. Then I got a couple of extra snares. We're all still on this 909 patch, by the way. So these are basically MIDI copies of this part up here. And I've just used a transposition or pitch control here just to push it up to another note. But as you can see, I've started the high cut right down at the bottom, so it's just adding to the weight and the pressure. Now, why have I panned it hard left? Well, I've also created then a second one and panned it hard right. Now, what we could do if we really wanted to be clever was actually grab the pan automation and automate that from a central position up to hard left and right like this. Okay, so let's just hear the last few bars of that. Okay, next level up. I then took the Analog Snares 1 patch, which is a whole menu of different round-robin samples from different analog snare drums, found a sound I like, and shoved an arpeggiator in the front. All right, this is important. I turned the rate of this arpeggiator to 30 seconds, so it's really doing a trill all the way through it. I've got the gate at 50%, so there's plenty of gaps in between the notes, and then I've carefully just tweaked the hold and release of the envelopes. And then, obviously, I've done our classic automation up on the high cut. Let me show you what that sounds like in solo. Now, I'm automating a number of parameters here. I'm automating the stereo width of the whole patch. I'm also automating the pitch of the patch, and that's why you get that fantastic pitch fall down effect. And just bringing the output up a touch as well. So that's halfway through the build-up. Let me play you what I mean. Okay, so now I wanted to add some almost punctuation, like exclamation marks, and just things that kind of either drench into reverb so that they fit across some of these fills and just add extra interest, or add tonal elements. Let me show you what I mean on this section. So that's a collection of things, especially at the end. These are actually a sort of collection of modern rim shots from the, which one's that? It's called Knock Rims patch. And then that's joined by the SNARE snares. Perfectly built out of noise. Analog snares too. And on the downbeat of where it kicks back in, the drop effectively, there's this heavily reverberant noise. So bring that all together with some effects and the bass, and this is what you've got. That's a feeling and an emotional experience in a club that we are all so used to. And please note, everything that I've done here, there's hardly any EQ on these sounds. These are just as the snare patches come out of the box. Something that I'm really proud of. I wanted to give you guys the very best starting points that you can with these sounds, so you can just get on with the creative flow without tons of EQ and distortion and compression, all the rest of the stuff. Okay, let's talk about some tricks here. First of all, one of the big effects through this is this riser, and it's dead simple. It's just one of the standard Hoover patches inside of Silent with a bend range set to 12 semitones. And if you look at the MIDI information here, all I've done is just held a note that is the key of the track in this case, which is B, and then just drawn a pitch curve all the way up. And you see just on the last bit, it reaches the highest point that the pitch bend will allow. So in other words, I know this is going to stretch across 2 octaves over the course of that rise, but ultimately it will just hit that note for a little bit, the actual main note of the track a little bit longer as it falls into that transition and the drop kicks in. Okay, now for some tricky bits and the bass. And this, I've done something I didn't expect to do at the beginning of this. And I'm using this. This is DearVR's Pro 2. Now, I've had the first version of this that would basically take any sound, turn it into mono. You could select between the left or right channels if it was a stereo sound. And then it allowed you to position it in a kind of fake 3D environment. And you could chuck this out in binaural. It was actually part of one of the Plugin Alliance bundles that I had. This recently came out, and I got it because I have loved mucking around with this stuff for a while. This, believe it or not, allows me to kind of binaurally place, which is a kind of fake version of 3D audio, the bass part and move it about. So let me show you what I'm doing. And also, one really important thing, just have a look at the notes here quickly. You can see on this first section that I'm doing the musical changes that were used in the track just before. But for the second part of this build-up, I'm actually holding it just on the root note. That is a great way to increase pressure, to just hold on this root, or just hold on one note for the second part of a build-up. So then when it slams back in, you get those musical changes again. So have a look here at what this is actually doing. So it's basically slightly softening the bass because it's effectively moving it away from your listener position and moving it behind you. Now, I found this to be remarkable for certain things in breakdowns because when you slam straight back in with the thing fully present, you get a fantastic transition. I've used this plugin quite a lot on this production, and there's an Avenger sound, a VPS Avenger sound, that I've just placed again behind the head so it kind of doesn't get in the way. In fact, I really should have automated it and moved it around. But this kind of more spatialized mixing is, in my opinion, the way forward with club productions, because we're always trying to kind of keep the middle carefully produced so that you get that solidity with the actual main part of the drums. So to be able to position certain synth sounds and effects, particularly around it, is quite remarkable. Now, one last thing that I did automate just before that drop really kicks in is that I do have a very gentle high-pass filter on the actual master before it kicks into a glue compressor that's doing a bit of limiting as well, or a bit of clipping. And it's just kind of rising up just a bit, and then it's slamming straight back down on the first downbeat, the first main beat of the drop. So as you can hear, anything that you can do to just accentuate that contrast between the microseconds before and the first all-important hit of the actual drop, because in clubs, that's the moment where the sound systems actually relax a little bit, and suddenly you kind of get all this mid-range noise. And the moment that sub slams in, it's dopamine central. And this is why, still to this day, these risers and these kind of build-ups are so important. So can we do anything better with this riser? Yeah, how about we take the 32nd arpeggiated snares and with some automation spin them round the virtual head with this DearVR plugin. These build-ups are so important in EDM records because in a club you feel this pressure. It's about pressure and release, but also it's about contrast, and every single little layer of contrast that you can build in so that everything seems to just be reaching a crescendo before it flips on a dime like that is absolutely vital. And then how about we automate the pitch of the main snare that's doing this fill? So we go all the way up there and then, actually bring it to about there and then slam it back down to normal here. In fact, a little bit under. So we get this kind of rise. That sounds like fun. Let's get all the music back in and listen to the whole thing. what I'm doing here is because I've done all the hard work with these bits here, I'm able to kind of nick certain bits of it out and use it for little mini fills as part of the rest of the production. Now, one quick note, the eagle-eyed amongst you will have seen that I've grouped all of the snare drums together. I've just pulled some of the total sub off, I think at about 38 hertz. It's quite dramatic. I'm also firing all of those group snares into this, the invisible limiter. So I've set this up to unity gain. By clicking this, it automatically drops the output as I gain into it. And you'll see that it's just clipping the very top part. You do have to be careful of overusing limiters on stems and that kind of thing because it's very easily to totally overcook audio. But for this kind of thing, it's absolutely vital to have a balanced production. And if you can set this so that it's controlled before it's hitting actually your master stages, then everything's in a good place. I am not an advocate of clip to zero mixing. I've seen an awful lot of people get in a real mess with this thing. Please be careful. A lot of DAWs are actually sounding better if they're driven lower. But every now and again, the use of a limiter to control a whole load of stuff that's all firing into one place can really help your master bus processing. This has only used a few patches inside of F9 Snare. Come and visit the webpage now to see all of the details and hear more of this amazing pack in action.